Blood dripped from Samuel's blistered feet onto Nevada's merciless sand, each step a fresh torment. The 10-year-old boy stumbled forward, his ghost-white skin already burning crimson under the savage afternoon sun. "Pa, please," he screamed, his strange pink-tinged eyes fixed on the wagon, rattling away dust clouds, swallowing his only chance at survival. His father didn't even look back. Only his mother's face appeared briefly tear-streaked, agonized but complicit in his abandonment as she disappeared over the horizon. Samuel collapsed to his knees, the sand scorching his alabaster flesh. 3 miles from nowhere, no water, no shelter. The buzzards were already circling. "You bring nothing but death." His father's final words echoed. The drought had lasted 3 years. 2 siblings dead. Crops withered. And the community whispers had grown to shouts. The boy with devil-white hair and strange eyes was cursed. The preacher had finally convinced Jacob Miller that his firstborn was an abomination. Samuel had seen the hatred building in his father's eyes for months. But he never truly believed the man would drive him deep into the desert and leave him to die. Not until this moment, when the reality crashed over him like a physical blow. The sun hammered down. Each breath drew superheated air into his lungs. Samuel crawled toward a scrubby bush, its meager shadow his only hope against imminent heat stroke. His skin, always too sensitive, always burning in even mild sunlight, was already blistering across his shoulders and face. By sunset, his throat had closed from thirst, his cracked lips unable to form words. In the distance, a jagged rock formation rose like the spine of some ancient beast. With survival instinct overriding pain, Samuel staggered toward it. Night fell with shocking swiftness, the killing heat transforming into bone-deep cold. Samuel huddled atop a flat boulder, his unique eyes, a curse in daylight, now scanning the darkness with unnatural clarity. And what they saw froze the blood in his veins. Yellow eyes. 1 pair, then 3, then 7, materializing at the edge of the boulder field. Wolves. Their low growls carried on the night air as they circled, sizing up their prey. The pack leader, massive battle-scarred, tested the boulder's base, looking for a climbing path. Samuel's heart slammed against his ribs as the wolf's claws scrabbled against stone. He fumbled for loose rocks, hurling them with desperate accuracy. "Go away." His voice broke more sob than shout. A stone struck the alpha's flank, drawing a yelp, but no retreat. Time blurred as Samuel fought unconsciousness and predators simultaneously. His small arsenal of stones dwindled. The wolves grew bolder. The largest found purchase on a lower ledge, yellow eyes now level with the boy's perch. Samuel stared into those merciless pupils, certain these would be the final moments of his short, unwanted life. A war cry split the night, so sudden and fierce that Samuel thought he'd imagined it. The wolf's head snapped toward the sound. A figure thundered toward them on horseback, silhouetted against the stars, brandishing what looked like fire. The wolves scattered, but regrouped quickly, snarling their defiance. The rider, a woman, circled Samuel's boulder, swinging a burning bundle of herbs above her head, shouting in a language he didn't understand. She made 3 complete circuits, each one driving the wolves further back until they melted into the darkness. Only then did Samuel get his first clear look at his rescuer. An older native woman with weathered copper skin, intricate braids, and piercing eyes that seemed to peer straight through him. But what struck him most was her expression, not disgust or fear at his strange appearance, but compassion and curiosity. "Be not afraid, little one," she said in accented English. "The wolves will not harm you now." Samuel stared, wondering if she was a dying hallucination. Are you real?" he croaked. The woman's face softened. "Yes, child. I am real." She dismounted and approached, extending her hand. "Come. You need water and shelter." As she helped him down, his legs buckled immediately. She caught him with surprising strength, supporting his slight frame to her pony. She uncorked a water skin and held it to his cracked lips. Small sips, she instructed. Too much at once will make you sick. The cool water was the most exquisite sensation Samuel had ever experienced. As he drank, the woman examined his sunburnt skin and bleeding feet with professional detachment. "What is your name, child?" "Oh, Samuel," he whispered. "Samuel Miller. I am Nemi of the New People." "What brings you alone to the desert, Samuel Miller?" His eyes welled with fresh tears. "My pa said I bring death. He left me to die." Something dangerous flashed in Nemi's eyes before she controlled it. "No child brings death," she said firmly. "Your father was wrong to leave you here." As they rode through the night, Samuel's head lolled against her chest. His last conscious thought before exhaustion claimed him was that this stranger, this savage, as his father would call her, had shown him more kindness in minutes than he'd received in years from his own blood. Dawn broke over a Shoshone camp nestled between rocky outcroppings. Samuel awoke to barking dogs and curious faces peering into Nemi's dwelling. Word spread like wildfire. Nemi had returned with a ghost child, a boy with hair white as snow and eyes that reflected light like a mountain lion's. Chief Wovoka, his face a map of deep lines and hard-earned wisdom, was first to approach. "What is this you bring to our camp, Nemi?" he asked in their native tongue. "A child abandoned to die," she replied steadily. "The spirits led me to him." The chief's eyes narrowed as he studied Samuel's unusual appearance. "He is of the white spirits. He is a boy," Nemi answered. "A boy who needs healing." An elderly woman with clouded eyes pushed through the gathering crowd. "Let me see him," she demanded, her gnarled hands reaching for Samuel's face. Nemi allowed the elder known as Singing Bird to touch Samuel's features. The old woman's fingers traced his face with gentle precision. "Ah," she murmured after a moment. "The old stories speak of such children, born without the protection of the Earth Mother's paint. The sun is their enemy, the moon their friend." She addressed the gathering. "This is not a spirit, but a human touched by the Sky Father's breath. In the northern tribes, they are considered blessed." Not everyone was convinced. A young warrior named Red Fox stepped forward, his face twisted with suspicion. "The white men bring nothing but disease and death to our people," he said harshly. "And now you bring their outcast. What curse comes with him?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Samuel recognized the tone of rejection all too well, even without understanding the words. Nemi's voice cut through the dissent like a knife. "Enough," she commanded. "This child was cast out to die because his own people feared what they did not understand. Will we prove ourselves no wiser?" Her eyes swept the crowd challengingly. I followed the Spirit's guidance to him. "Would you question their wisdom as well as mine?" Chief Wovoka studied Samuel thoughtfully before addressing his people. "The child will stay with Nemi until we understand the purpose of his coming to us. No harm will come to him in our camp." His gaze hardened as it fell on Red Fox. "Any who disagree may take their concerns to the council fire tonight." In Nemi's dwelling, Samuel watched anxiously as she mixed a healing paste for his sunburnt skin. "Why did you save me?" he asked suddenly. "Everyone else thinks I'm bad luck." Nemi paused, choosing her words carefully. "Many years ago I had a son," she said softly. "He would be a man now if he had lived. Raiders from another tribe took him when he was smaller than you." Pain flickered across her face. "Perhaps the spirits sent you to fill that empty place. Or perhaps you have another purpose here that we do not yet understand." She resumed applying the salve. "What I know is that no child deserves to be abandoned for being born different. The true curse is fear Samuel, not you." Samuel absorbed this radical perspective. "My eyes hurt in the bright sun," he confided. "But I can see really good at night, better than anybody." Each gift comes with its price. Nemi nodded. The people here will be cautious at first. Some may be unkind, but they are not cruel by nature. Give them time to know you beyond your appearance. As she worked, Nemi began humming a healing song. Despite his anxiety, Samuel's eyelids grew heavy. For the first time in memory, he drifted into sleep without fear of tomorrow. Outside, the camp debated his fate. Red Fox argued passionately that bringing any white person into their midst was dangerous, especially one rejected by his own kind. Others, particularly the elders, counseled patience. Singing Bird spoke last. "I have touched his face," she reminded them. "There is no evil in him, only pain. A child in pain can become a man of great compassion or great cruelty, depending on what he is shown. What lesson do we teach if we cast out the already rejected?" Her words secured Samuel a temporary place among them, though many remained wary. What none could know was that their decision that night would eventually determine the survival of their entire band. Samuel's integration into the tribe progressed with unexpected swiftness. Running Deer, a boy slightly older than Samuel, appointed himself as guide and translator. The children's initial wariness gave way to fascination with Samuel's night vision and unusual appearance. "Like mountain lion you see in dark?" Running Deer asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "Yeah." Samuel nodded, surprised to find his difference treated as fascinating rather than frightening. "I can see everything at night, almost like daytime." This revelation elevated him instantly from oddity to marvel. Soon he was participating in their games, stumbling through their language with growing confidence. Red Fox maintained his distance, watching with narrow-eyed suspicion, but most adults gradually accepted Nemi's strange ward. Samuel's first opportunity to prove his worth came unexpectedly. A hunting party returned with Little Creek, a respected hunter, bitten by a rattlesnake. As Nemi worked to treat him, Samuel stepped forward hesitantly. "My ma used to draw poison," he said. "From snake bites. She showed me once." All eyes turned to him as he described the charcoal and tobacco poultice and the technique for extracting venom. Nemi immediately prepared the materials, ignoring the murmurs of doubt from those watching. After an hour of treatment following Samuel's method, Little Creek's breathing stabilized. "He will live," Nemi announced to the relieved family. Turning to Samuel, she added quietly, "Your knowledge helped save a good man today. The tribe will not forget this." That night, Chief Wovoka approached Samuel at the communal fire. "You helped save Little Creek. This good. Maybe you learn more healing from Nemi. Be useful to tribe." It wasn't full acceptance, but it was acknowledgement of potential worth. Samuel nodded solemnly. "I want to learn." As weeks passed, Samuel's value to the tribe grew. His unique night vision proved invaluable during evening hunting expeditions. His quick mind absorbed Nemi's healing knowledge with natural aptitude. More importantly, he began to find something he'd never experienced before: a sense of belonging. Not everyone embraced this transformation. Red Fox and his closest allies maintained their distance, occasionally suggesting that the unusual boy brought bad luck when minor misfortunes occurred. But Samuel had developed resilience he never knew he possessed. "My pa was afraid of me," he told Nemi one evening as they sorted healing herbs. "I used to think it was because I was bad somehow. Now I think he was just scared of things being different." There is wisdom in that observation. Nemi nodded approvingly. Samuel's first true test came when scouts reported white settlers establishing a homestead near tribal territory. Chief Wovoka ordered a small observation party with Red Fox, unexpectedly requesting Samuel's presence. "I wish to bring the white boy," Red Fox declared. "He understands their words, their ways. He could be useful." Nemi stepped forward, suspicious. "Why this sudden desire for Samuel's company, you who have shown him nothing but distrust?" Red Fox met her gaze steadily. Precisely because I do not trust him. I would see how he reacts when faced with his own kind again. Chief Wovoka considered this argument before nodding. The boy will go. But any harm comes to him, Red Fox, and you answer to me. Before departing, Nemi pressed a small wolf-shaped stone amulet into Samuel's hand. This belonged to my son, she said softly. Carry it for protection. Whatever you find there, remember who you are becoming here, not who they once told you to be. The scouting party traveled in tense silence until they reached a vantage point overlooking a small valley. There, a family of settlers was constructing a cabin beside a meager spring. Samuel watched with detached interest, relieved they weren't his own family. What do they say? Red Fox whispered as the man below called to his wife. He says the roof will be finished before sunset. Samuel translated. She's worried about rain for their crops. As the afternoon wore on, the scouts gathered valuable information. The family was alone with basic weapons directly on an important tribal hunting trail. But as they prepared to leave, commotion erupted at the homestead. The woman was shouting, pointing toward approaching riders. More white men come. Red Fox growled. We must warn the tribe. Samuel's unique eyes narrowed as he studied the distant riders. Those aren't settlers, he said with growing alarm. Their horses move differently. And they're riding wrong. 6 rough-looking men thundered into view, their posture and weapons marking them clearly as outlaws. Raiders, Samuel whispered. Bad men who rob and kill. Red Fox assessed the situation instantly. We leave now. This is not our concern. But they'll kill them. Samuel protested, shock evident in his voice. That family doesn't stand a chance. They are not our people. Red Fox replied coldly. White men killing white men is not our battle. The moral dilemma tore at Samuel. These settlers represented everything he had learned to fear, yet watching them face slaughter without warning violated everything Nemi had taught him about the value of life. I have to warn them, he said firmly, already rising from their hiding place. Red Fox grabbed his arm roughly. You betray us for them after all Nemi has done. Samuel met his gaze steadily. Nemi would never let innocent people die if she could stop it. Not even white people. After a tense moment, Red Fox released his arm with a curt nod. Go. We will cover your approach. Heart-hammering, Samuel sprinted toward the homestead. The settler raised his rifle when he spotted the strange white-haired boy in native clothing. Stop right there. We're raiders coming, Samuel shouted breathlessly. 6 men on horseback, they'll kill you. The man hesitated only briefly before ushering his family inside the partially built cabin. You too, boy, unless you're with them. Samuel dashed toward the cabin, just as the raiders crested the final ridge, whooping and firing shots into the air. The next few minutes passed in chaotic intensity. The family barricaded themselves inside, the father positioning himself at a window, with his rifle, the mother loading a shotgun with trembling hands. Come on out, friend, called the leader mockingly. We just want to talk about those fine oxen. My neighbors know where we are. The settlers shouted back a desperate bluff. Patrol from Fort Bradley visits weekly. The raiders laughed. Nearest patrol's 2 days away. We'll be gone in an hour with your livestock, your supplies, and anything else we fancy. His voice hardened. How many bodies we leave behind is entirely up to you. Samuel's mind raced. If the raiders set fire to the cabin, everyone inside would die. Glancing at the terrified family, then at the back window facing the rocky slope, where he knew Red Fox watched, an idea formed. I can get help, he whispered. If I reach that ridge, there are Shoshone warriors who might help us. The man stared at Samuel's unusual appearance. You're living with Indians. They're good people, Samuel said simply. They took me in when no one else would. He nodded toward the window. Cover me, I'll be fast. Before anyone could object, Samuel slipped through the window and sprinted toward the rocky slope. Behind him, the settler fired several shots to draw the raiders' attention away, but Samuel had miscalculated. The outlaws spotted him immediately, two breaking off to give chase on horseback. A bullet kicked up dirt by his feet, another whistled past his ear. Zigzagging desperately, he realized with sickening clarity that the rocks were too far, he wouldn't make it. Then the impossible happened. War cries echoed across the valley as arrows rained down on the pursuing raiders. But instead of providing cover for Samuel's escape, the diversion drew the remaining outlaws' attention. The leader, realizing they were being ambushed from the ridge, shouted new orders. "Get the boy, he's with them." Samuel tried to change direction, but a raider on horseback cut him off. The man leaped from his mount, tackling Samuel to the ground. A knife flashed in the sunlight as the outlaw pressed the blade against the boy's throat. "Call them off," he shouted toward the ridge, "or I slice this freak's throat open." Time froze. Samuel felt the cold steel against his skin and the raider's breath hot on his face. From the corner of his eye, he saw Red Fox and the other warriors hesitate, arrows nocked, but unable to shoot without risking Samuel's life. Something shifted in Samuel at that moment, a refusal to be a victim again. His hand closed around a fist-sized rock in the dirt. With a strength born of desperation, he smashed it against his captor's temple. The raider howled, his grip loosening just enough for Samuel to squirm free. He rolled away as an arrow found its mark in the man's shoulder. Scrambling to his feet, Samuel ran in a serpentine pattern toward the rocks, expecting a bullet in his back at any second. He reached the base of the slope and began to climb Red Fox, extending a hand to pull him to safety behind a large boulder. "You fight like new." The warrior said genuine respect in his voice for the first time. The raiders, now facing unexpected resistance from multiple directions, retreated to regroup. Taking advantage of the confusion, Red Fox implemented a brilliant strategy, moving quickly between positions, creating the illusion of a much larger force. The raiders, increasingly unnerved, eventually fled, taking only one horse in their hasty retreat. When Samuel approached the cabin afterward, then the settler family emerged in astonishment. "You brought them to help us?" the man asked incredulously, seeing Samuel standing with 3 Shoshone warriors. "This is Red Fox," Samuel said. "He and his friends saved all our lives." After an uncomfortable silence, the settler lowered his rifle and stepped forward, extending his hand toward Red Fox. "I'm James Cooper. I owe you my family's lives." Red Fox stared at the offered hand before clasping it briefly. Then he added something unexpected. "Tell them this spring dries in the hottest months. If they wish to survive here, they should dig deeper for water." This practical advice represented more than just survival information. It was a small step toward coexistence rather than conflict. As Samuel translated, understanding dawned on James Cooper's face. "Thank him," Cooper said soberly, "and tell him we'll respect the hunting grounds." The encounter forged an unexpected connection between the Shoshone camp and the Cooper homestead. In the months that followed, Samuel occasionally visited, bringing tribal medicine when needed and receiving reading lessons from Mrs. Cooper. These interactions made him a bridge between worlds, typically divided by fear and misunderstanding. But as spring gave way to summer, rumors reached the tribe of increasing settler activity. More worryingly, a trapper passing through mentioned outbreaks of a strange fever in eastern settlements. When Samuel next visited the Coopers, he found little Emma Cooper burning with fever, angry red spots covering her skin. "It's the pox," Mrs. Cooper whispered, her face ashen. "God help us." Samuel raced back to the Shoshone camp with the alarming news. Nemi immediately began gathering specific herbs, instructing Samuel to prepare protective measures. But it was already too late. The trapper had traded with tribal hunters days earlier, potentially exposing the entire community. "We must prepare healing medicines, isolate any who show symptoms, and pray to the spirits for protection," Nemi told the council. Afterward, she revealed to Samuel a possible treatment. Long ago, another such sickness came to our people. An old medicine woman showed me a method using fluid from the sores of someone who has recovered. It doesn't prevent the sickness entirely, but makes it less deadly. Like Mrs. Cooper, Samuel realized. She survived the pox as a child. She has the scars. Despite the danger, Samuel returned to the Cooper homestead to collect the precious fluid. Mrs. Cooper, despite her exhaustion from tending her sick children, agreed to help. "I've heard of this," she said. "They called it variolation back east. If it might help your people." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing characteristic scars. When Samuel returned to the camp, disaster had already struck. 3 people showed symptoms, with more falling ill each day. Working through the night, Nemi prepared the variolation treatment. By dawn, they began treating the healthy tribal members, beginning with Chief Wovoka himself. The epidemic's true impact soon became apparent. Those already infected suffered terribly high fevers, painful sores, difficulty breathing. Despite their best efforts, deaths occurred, each one devastating to the close-knit community. Red Fox, who had refused the treatment out of suspicion, fell seriously ill. Samuel found him burning with fever pride, crumbling under the assault of the disease. "Why do you help me?" Red Fox asked during a moment of lucidity. "I haven't been kind to you." "Because that's what healers do." Samuel answered, simply bathing the warrior's face with cool water. Something shifted in Red Fox's expression. "Your heart is new," he murmured before slipping back into feverish dreams. As the epidemic worsened, Nemi made a grave announcement. "We need more of the healing fluid, but our supply is gone. Someone must return to the Cooper home." "I'll go," Samuel volunteered immediately. "No," Nemi countered. "You are needed here. The journey is too dangerous alone, and we cannot spare warriors to accompany you." But that night, Samuel awoke to find 3 more children showing symptoms, including Running Deer, his closest friend. With Nemi occupied treating another patient, Samuel made a decision. He slipped from the camp, taking a pony determined to reach the Coopers before dawn. The desert night concealed many dangers. Halfway to the homestead, a mountain lion's screech froze Samuel in his tracks. His night vision revealed the big cat crouched on a nearby rock, muscles tensed to spring. Samuel had no weapon except a small knife. His pony, sensing the predator, reared in panic, throwing him to the ground. Pain shot through his ankle as he landed. The mountain lion leapt not at Samuel, but at the fleeing pony. Instinct took over. Samuel grabbed a stone and hurled it with all his strength, striking the cat's flank. The startled animal turned its attention from the horse to the boy. Samuel backed away slowly, another rock in hand. The mountain lion stalked forward, tail twitching. In that moment, Samuel remembered Nemi's wolf amulet. He clutched it tightly, whispering the prayer she had taught him. Whether by spiritual intervention or coincidence. A distant wolf howl echoed through the canyon. The mountain lion hesitated, then slunk away into the darkness. With a possibly broken ankle and no horse, Samuel faced an impossible choice: continue crawling to the Coopers or return to camp empty-handed. Thinking of Running Deer's fever-flushed face, he chose to press on, dragging himself through the sand mile after agonizing mile. Dawn was breaking when James Cooper found him collapsed a quarter-mile from their homestead. "Good God, boy," he exclaimed, lifting Samuel's nearly unconscious form. "What happened to you?" Through cracked lips, Samuel explained his mission. Despite their own ongoing battle with the disease, the Coopers immediately gathered the materials he needed. Mrs. Cooper insisted on returning with him to help administer the treatment, despite her husband's objections. "These people saved us from raiders," she said firmly. "I won't leave them to die if I can help." By the time they reached the Shoshone camp mounted double on Cooper's horse, Samuel was delirious with pain and exhaustion. Nemi's face, when she saw his condition, reflected both relief and horror. "Foolish, brave child," she murmured, examining his severely swollen ankle. "You could have died out there." "A running deer," Samuel managed. "Is he—" "Alive," Nemi assured him, "but very ill." With Mrs. Cooper's help, they prepared more of the variolation treatment. The white woman's presence in the camp caused a stir, but the dire circumstances overwhelmed cultural barriers. She worked alongside Nemi, moving from patient to patient, demonstrating techniques she had learned from doctors back east. Samuel drifted in and out of consciousness as Nemi treated his ankle and the fever that had taken hold during his ordeal. In his lucid moments, he helped translate between Nemi and Mrs. Cooper, forging an unprecedented collaboration. On the 5th night of the epidemic, disaster struck. A sudden dust storm engulfed the camp, contaminating water supplies and making it impossible to maintain the isolation of sick patients. Worse, several children showed symptoms of a secondary lung infection that the standard treatments couldn't address. "They need a different medicine," Nemi told Mrs. Cooper gravely. "One made from a blue flower that grows only on the high ridge to the north. Without it, they will surely die." "I can go," Mrs. Cooper volunteered. "No." Chief Wovoka intervened. "You do not know the plant, and our warriors are either sick or needed to protect the camp." Samuel, overhearing from his sickbed, pushed himself upright despite the pain. "I know the flower," he said weakly. "Nemi showed me when we gathered medicines last month." "You cannot walk," Nemi objected, pointing to his splinted ankle. "Then I'll ride," Samuel insisted. "Please, Nemi. Running Deer and the others won't last another day without that medicine." After heated debate, a compromise was reached. Samuel would guide Mrs. Cooper to the location, both mounted on the tribe's strongest pony. They would depart immediately, hoping to return before dawn. The journey was harrowing. Samuel, feverish and in pain, clung to consciousness by sheer willpower. Mrs. Cooper, exhausted from days of treating the sick, supported the boy as they rode through the night. The high ridge was treacherous, even in daylight. In darkness, with a dust storm still swirling, it became a nightmare landscape of shifting shadows and hidden drop-offs. "Now there," Samuel pointed weakly when they finally reached the correct elevation. "The flowers grow near that twisted juniper tree." Mrs. Cooper helped him dismount and then began gathering the precious blue blossoms by moonlight. They had nearly filled their pouch when a rattling sound froze them both. A massive diamondback rattlesnake, disturbed by their presence, coiled less than 3 feet away. In the darkness, Mrs. Cooper hadn't seen it, but Samuel's night vision had picked out its distinctive pattern too late. "Don't move," Samuel whispered. The snake's rattle intensified. Samuel knew snakes could strike half their body length. This one could reach either of them in an instant. His mind raced through Nemi's teachings about desert creatures. Rattlesnakes rarely attacked unless threatened. If they backed away slowly, but as they began to retreat, Mrs. Cooper's foot dislodged a small rock. The snake, startled by the sudden movement, lunged not at her, but at Samuel, in a split-second decision that would forever change his life. Samuel pushed Mrs. Cooper clear while trying to dodge himself. He wasn't fast enough. The snake's fangs sank deep into his calf, injecting venom designed to kill prey much smaller than a human boy. Mrs. Cooper's scream echoed across the ridge as she killed the snake with a rock. Remembering her son's treatment of Little Creek, she immediately applied emergency measures, a tourniquet above the bite cuts, to drain the poison suction, to extract what she could. "We need to get you back to camp," she said urgently, her face white with fear. "No." Samuel gasped through waves of agony. "The flowers first. The children need them." Despite his condition, Samuel insisted they complete their mission before seeking treatment for himself. Every minute mattered for both the children at camp and for his own survival. The venom was already spreading his leg, swelling visibly, but the flowers represented life for many. Their return journey became a race against death itself. Samuel drifted between consciousness and darkness, the pain so intense he sometimes wondered if he was already dead. Mrs. Cooper rode with desperate speed, one arm holding Samuel upright, the other clutching the precious medicine pouch. They arrived at camp near dawn, Samuel barely breathing, his skin gray and clammy. As Mrs. Cooper shouted for help, chaos erupted. Nemi rushed forward, horrified at Samuel's condition. "Snake," Mrs. Cooper explained breathlessly, handing over the medicine pouch. "He made me collect all the flowers before coming back. He said the children couldn't wait." What followed was the most intense battle for life Nemi had ever fought. While other healers prepared the blue flower medicine for the children, she focused entirely on Samuel. The venom had a significant head start, and the bite located dangerously close to major blood vessels. Traditional treatments that might have worked immediately after the bite now offered little hope. As Samuel's breathing grew more labored, his pulse weaker, Nemi made a desperate decision. There was one treatment, ancient, dangerous, used only in the most extreme circumstances. It required a specific combination of herbs that would either purge the venom completely or stop his heart trying. "He will certainly die without it," she told Mrs. Cooper gravely. "With it, he has a small chance. Do it." Mrs. Cooper nodded, tears streaming down her face. "He's the bravest boy I've ever known." Nemi prepared the powerful medicine, adding a pinch of dried rattlesnake venom, curing like an ancient principle. As she administered the dark liquid drop by drop under Samuel's tongue, she began a healing chant that was both prayer and farewell. Minutes passed with no visible change. Samuel's breathing continued to shallow his skin, taking on a bluish tinge. Red Fox, now recovering from his own illness, joined the vigil at the boy's side. "Fight, Ghost Boy," he urged, using the nickname that had once been an insult, but was now spoken with respect. "Your journey is not finished." Samuel's condition deteriorated through the day and into the night. The blue flower medicine was working miracles for the other children. Running Deer's fever had broken, the youngest patients were breathing easier, but the boy who had made their recovery possible seemed beyond saving. As midnight approached, Nemi sensed the critical moment had arrived. Samuel's pulse had become so faint she could barely detect it. "His spirit walks between worlds now," she told the somber gathering. "We must call him back if he is to live." What followed was an ancient Shoshone soul-calling ceremony, never before performed for someone not born to the tribe. Chief Wovoka himself led the prayers, joined by every member strong enough to participate. Even Mrs. Cooper, comprehending the gravity, if not the words, added her own desperate prayers to the spiritual effort. Near dawn, when hope had nearly extinguished, Samuel's eyes fluttered open. They glowed with an unusual intensity in the dim light, focusing first on Nemi, then on the others gathered around him. "I saw them," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "My brother and sister who died. They told me to come back, that I wasn't finished here." Nemi's weathered face reflected both joy and wonder. In the tribe's spiritual tradition, such a vision signified the deepest form of acceptance. The ancestors themselves had acknowledged Samuel as one of their own. Recovery was agonizingly slow. The snake venom had caused tissue damage that would never fully heal, leaving Samuel with a permanent limp and occasional nerve pain that would plague him for life. But as summer turned to fall, his strength gradually returned. The epidemic had passed, claiming 14 lives, but sparing many more thanks to the variolation treatment and the blue flower medicine. Something fundamental had shifted in the tribe's perception of Samuel. The boy who had risked everything twice to save their children was no longer viewed as an outsider. Even those who had been most suspicious now greeted him with the respect due a proven member of the community. Red Fox, perhaps the most transformed, approached Samuel one evening as he sat watching the sunset, his damaged legs stretched before him. "I was wrong about you," the warrior admitted without preamble. "I believed a white skin meant a white heart. You have shown me that courage and loyalty have no color." Samuel, still thin and pale from his ordeal, nodded acceptance of this acknowledgement. "We all learn," he replied simply. "The elders say your spirit journey during the snake sickness marks you as having two souls, and from your birth, people one from the new." Red Fox continued. "Such a person stands between worlds, belonging to both, guided by both." This interpretation resonated deeply with Samuel. He had never felt he truly belonged anywhere until now, not with his birth family who had rejected him, not fully with the Shoshone despite their growing acceptance. But perhaps his purpose was precisely this liminality, this ability to bridge seemingly incompatible worlds. The epidemic changed more than just Samuel's standing within the tribe. It forged an unprecedented bond between the Shoshone and the Cooper family. James Cooper, impressed by his wife's accounts of tribal medicine and cooperation during the crisis, approached Chief Wovoka with a radical proposal of formal alliance between their peoples for mutual protection and benefit. Such an arrangement was fraught with complications requiring constant translation of both language and cultural expectations. As discussions progressed, all eyes turned to Samuel. "You stand in both worlds," Chief Wovoka told him. "If this alliance is to succeed, you must help us walk this new path." Samuel felt the weight of this responsibility even as he recognized the truth in the chief's words. His near-death experience had given him a clarity of purpose he'd never possessed before. The permanent damage to his leg, a lifelong reminder of his choice to save others, seemed a small price for finding his true calling. The most dramatic twist in Samuel's journey came 6 months after the epidemic, when a military surveying party arrived in the valley. With them traveled a man whose face Samuel had never expected to see again, Jacob Miller, his father. Samuel was collecting herbs with Nemi when running deer sprinted to them with the news. "White soldiers come. Many men, many guns. And one man asks for you by name, says he is your father." The shock hit Samuel like a physical blow. His hand instinctively went to the wolf amulet at his neck, seeking its comfort. "Why would he come back?" he whispered. "He left me to die." Nemi's face hardened. "Perhaps to finish what he started," she said grimly. "Or perhaps for something else. We will face this together." They returned to find the camp in turmoil. 24 soldiers led by a colonel named Henderson had established a temporary position nearby. Chief Wovoka was already engaged in wary negotiations with Red Fox, translating as best he could with his limited English. Standing slightly apart from the military men was Jacob Miller, older and more haggard than Samuel remembered his eyes, constantly scanning the gathered Shoshone as if searching for something or someone. When Samuel limped into view, his father's face drained of color. "Samuel," he gasped, taking an involuntary step forward before stopping himself. They said a white boy with strange eyes lived among these people, but I didn't truly believe." Samuel stood frozen, a storm of emotions battling within him, anger, fear, confusion, and beneath it all, the painful ember of a child's longing for his father's love. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice steady despite his churning insides. Before Jacob could answer, Colonel Henderson intervened. "You're the boy who lives with these Indians. You speak their language." Samuel tore his gaze from his father to address the officer. "Yes, sir. I'm Samuel Miller. I serve as healer and translator for the new people." Henderson's eyebrows rose. "How fortunate. We've had difficulty making ourselves understood." He gestured toward the tense tribal leaders. "Please explain that we're conducting a territorial survey under government authority. We mean no harm if they cooperate." Samuel translated this message, carefully preserving the implied threat in the colonel's final words. Chief Wovoka's response was measured but firm, which Samuel conveyed with equal care. "The chief says this land has been new territory since before your grandfathers were born. What authority claims it now, As the negotiations proceeded, Samuel maintained rigid professionalism, refusing to look at his father again. But he could feel the man's eyes boring into him, a prickling discomfort between his shoulder blades. When the formal discussions concluded with an uneasy agreement, the survey would continue. But with tribal observers present, Jacob Miller approached his son at last. "Can we speak?" he asked, his voice roughened by emotion. Privately. Samuel glanced at Nemi, who had positioned herself protectively at his side. "Anything you wish to say to me can be said before my true family," he replied coldly. Jacob flinched at the word true, but nodded his acceptance. "Your mother is dead," he said abruptly. "Fever took her last winter. Before she died, she made me swear to find you, to tell you she never stopped loving you, never wanted to leave you in the desert." His voice cracked. "Her final words were your name." The news of his mother's death hit Samuel like a knife to the chest. Despite her weakness, her failure to protect him, he had loved her. To know she had died with him on her mind opened a wound he thought long scarred over. "And you?" Samuel asked, struggling to keep his voice level. "Did you come only for her sake, or do you have words of your own?" Jacob Miller stared at his son, taking in the changes. 3 years had wrought the confidence in his bearing, despite his injured leg, and the intelligence in his unusual eyes, the tribal clothing and amulet that marked his new allegiance. "I was wrong," he said finally, the words seeming physically painful to extract. "The drought, the deaths, the failing crops, none of it was your fault. It was easier to blame you than to accept that God was testing us, or simply that nature follows its own cruel path." He swallowed hard. "I listened to fear and superstition instead of the bond of blood. There's no forgiveness for such a sin. But I had to tell you anyway." Samuel absorbed these words, searching for how they made him feel. 3 years ago, he would have given anything to hear his father acknowledge his wrongdoing. Now the admission seemed strangely hollow important, but no longer essential to his sense of self. "You're right that some things can't be forgiven," he said finally. "But I thank you for my mother's message. It heals something in me to know she cared." Jacob nodded resignation and grief, etching deeper lines around his eyes. "The colonel has offered me a position with the survey team," he said. "I'll be in this territory for some months. If you ever wish to speak again—" "Perhaps," Samuel replied, making no commitments. "I have responsibilities here." As Jacob turned to leave, Samuel was struck by a sudden realization his father now appeared smaller, diminished, no longer the towering figure of terror from his childhood. The man who had once held the power of life and death over him was now just that, a man flawed and broken by his own actions. "Wait," Samuel called. Jacob turned back, hope flaring briefly in his eyes. "There's something I need to know. When you left me in the desert, was it truly your idea alone?" A shadow passed over Jacob's face. "No," he admitted after a long pause. "There were others, men from our settlement, led by Preacher Harmon. They came at night, said the drought would never break while you remained among us. They threatened to burn us out if I didn't remove the curse." His shoulders slumped. "I was a coward who let others think for me, and I've paid for it every day since, with your mother's tears and my own shame." This revelation struck Samuel like lightning. Not just the personal betrayal, but its implications for other children like him, other families facing pressure from fear and ignorance. A new understanding began to form in his mind about the true breadth of the bridge he needed to build. After Jacob departed with the survey team, Samuel sought out Chief Wovoka. "There's something I must tell you," he said gravely, relating his father's confession about the men who had pressured his family. The chief considered this information thoughtfully. "Fear makes men into monsters," he observed. "This is true in all tribes of all colors." "Yes," Samuel agreed. And that's why our work, this alliance between your people and settlers like the Coopers, matters more than I realized. It's not just about land or resources. It's about fighting the fear that turns neighbors against each other, that casts out children for being different. Chief Wovoka studied Samuel with new appreciation. You speak with the wisdom of one who has walked in many moccasins. He placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder. The territorial governor has requested a representative from our tribe to help prevent misunderstandings as more settlers come. I believe you should be that voice. This unexpected proposition left Samuel momentarily speechless. Me, but I'm neither fully white nor news. Precisely. The chief nodded. You stand in both worlds, belong to both worlds. Your words will have meaning to both peoples. The following months brought dramatic changes. Samuel, despite his youth, became an official liaison between the Shoshone and the territorial government. His unique position, a white-born boy raised by native people familiar with both cultures, yet fully owned by neither, made him ideally suited to navigate the treacherous political waters as settlement expanded. His relationship with his father evolved cautiously. Jacob Miller remained with the survey team, occasionally visiting the Shoshone camp to see his son. Their conversations were stilted at first, burdened by the past, but gradually developed into a fragile respect. Samuel could never fully trust the man who had abandoned him, but he found value in understanding his father's perspective on the changing territory. The most significant development came when Preacher Harmon and his followers established a new settlement just 3 days' ride from the Shoshone winter grounds. These were the same men who had pressured Jacob Miller to abandon his son, men whose fear-driven hatred posed a serious threat to the delicate peace Samuel and others had worked to build. Word reached the tribe through James Cooper, who had encountered the preacher's group at a trading post. They're speaking against any cooperation with the savages. Cooper reported grimly. Harmon is telling new settlers that the only good Indian is a dead one. This alarming news prompted an emergency council meeting. Some warriors advocated for immediate action to drive the hostile settlers away. Others recommended avoiding all contact. Samuel, weighing both his personal history with these men and his responsibilities to the tribe, proposed a different approach. Let me meet with the territorial governor first, he suggested. These men's hatred is based on ignorance and fear. Perhaps official pressure could contain their influence before violence erupts. Chief Wovoka agreed to this strategy, but Red Fox raised a valid concern. What if they recognize you, the ghost boy they once sentenced to death? Your presence alone might provoke them. It was a risk Samuel had already considered. They need to see what their actions created, he said quietly. Not a dead boy in the desert, but a voice for understanding between peoples. My very existence challenges their worldview. The meeting with Governor Nye was more productive than Samuel had dared hope. The governor, a pragmatic man concerned primarily with stable development of the territory, recognized that religious zealots fomenting hatred against native populations threatened that stability. I'll have a word with this preacher, Nye promised. Make it clear that the official position of this territory is peaceful coexistence and fair treatment. We've enough troubles with renegade bands without creating new conflicts through stupidity. But even as Samuel rode back to the Shoshone camp with this hopeful news, events were already spiraling beyond diplomatic solutions. Preacher Harmon, having heard rumors of a white Indian advising the governor, had connected the dots to the demon child he had once condemned. The attack came at dawn. 24 armed men from Harmon's settlement surrounded the winter camp while most of the tribe still slept. Their first shots were deliberately aimed over lodges, a warning, not a slaughter. Then Harmon's voice boomed across the compound. Send out the white devil child. We know he lives among you. The boy with cursed white hair and devil's eyes. Samuel awoke to chaos. Warriors were scrambling for weapons, women gathering children into central lodges for protection. Chief Wovoka was already organizing a defense, but the situation was dire. The attackers outnumbered the tribe's fighting men and held the high ground. Nemi gripped Samuel's arm as he reached for his medicine pouch. "They've come for you," she said, her voice tight with fear. "You must hide." "No," Samuel replied with sudden clarity. "This ends today, the fear, the hatred, the division. I won't hide anymore." Before she could stop him, Samuel limped to the edge of the camp. "I'm here, Preacher Harmon." He called, his voice stronger than he felt. "The boy you tried to murder has something to say." A murmur ran through the attackers as Samuel emerged into full view, his white hair gleaming in the early light. Harmon himself stepped forward, rifle raised, his gaunt face contorted with righteous fury. "Abomination," he snarled. "God's will was thwarted when these heathens saved you. We've come to finish what your father was too weak to complete." Samuel stood his ground, heart pounding but voice steady. "My father was weak, but not for the reason you think. His weakness was listening to your hatred instead of seeing his own child's humanity." He took a deliberate step forward. "Look at me, preacher. Really look. Do you see a demon or a boy who survived your cruelty? A curse or a healer who has saved lives both new and white?" Harmon's finger tightened on his trigger. "Pretty words from a devil's mouth," he spat. "Your very existence defiles God's natural order." "Which God?" Samuel challenged. "The one who commands love for your neighbor, or the false god of fear you've created?" He gestured toward the armed men. "You speak of natural order while planning to murder an entire camp of men, women, and children. Where is the godliness in that?" Before Harmon could respond, the sound of approaching riders drew everyone's attention. A cavalry detachment appeared on the ridge, led by Colonel Henderson, and with them rode Governor Nye himself, along with Jacob Miller. "Stand down immediately," the governor shouted as they approached. "This action is unlawful and unauthorized. Lower your weapons or face arrest." Confusion rippled through Harmon's men. They had expected to face only savages, not territorial authority backed by military force. Some immediately lowered their rifles, while others looked to Harmon for direction. The preacher himself showed no intention of surrendering. His rifle remained trained on Samuel, his eyes burning with fanatical certainty. "This is God's work," he declared. "No earthly authority supersedes divine mandate. What happened next would be retold for generations in both Shoshone and settler communities." As Harmon's fingers squeezed the trigger, Jacob Miller threw himself forward directly into the bullet's path. The shot cracked across the valley, and Jacob fell at his son's feet, blood blossoming across his chest. The sacrifice paralyzed everyone, attackers, defenders, soldiers, in a moment of shocked silence. Samuel dropped to his knees beside his father, medical training automatically taking over as he assessed the wound. The bullet had struck perilously close to the heart. "Why?" Samuel whispered, pressing his hands against the pulsing wound. "After everything." Jacob's eyes, clouded with pain, but remarkably clear in purpose, met his son's. "A father protects his child," he gasped. "I failed once. Not again. Not ever again." As Governor Nye's soldiers took Harmon and his men into custody, Samuel and Nemi fought desperately to save Jacob Miller's life. The wound was severe, the blood loss massive. Samuel's hands, usually so steady in crisis, trembled as he worked. "Stay with me," he urged his father. "Please, there's so much I never said." Jacob's lips curved in a faint smile. "I see now," he whispered. "Why the Almighty made you different. Not a curse, a bridge. You see in darkness what others can't." His voice faded as consciousness slipped away. For 3 days, Samuel rarely left his father's side. The bullet had been removed and the wound treated with the finest Shoshone and settler medicine combined, but infection set in despite their efforts. Jacob drifted between awareness and delirium, sometimes recognizing his son, other times calling for his long-dead wife. On the third night, during a moment of clarity, Jacob gripped Samuel's hand with surprising strength. "I need your forgiveness." He said each word a labor. "Not to ease my passing, but so you can live without this weight." Samuel, exhausted and emotionally raw, struggled with the request. Could he truly forgive the abandonment that had defined his life? Yet watching his father's desperate attempt at redemption, culminating in taking a bullet, meant for him touched something profound in Samuel's heart. "I forgive you," he said finally, the words releasing something long clenched within him. "Not because you deserve it, but because I need to be free of this anger. We both need peace." Relief washed over Jacob's face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Now I can tell your mother I made it right." His eyes drifted closed for the final time. Jacob Miller's death marked both an ending and a beginning. The man who had cast his son into the desert to die had given his life to save that same child, a redemption arc, witnessed by settler and Shoshone alike. The story spread quickly through the territory, growing with each telling until it achieved an almost mythic quality. Governor Nemi, seizing the symbolic opportunity, invited representatives from all nearby settlements and native bands to Jacob's funeral. There, he announced new territorial policies emphasizing cooperation and mutual respect, with Samuel formally installed as official liaison between cultures. This young man, Nemi declared, gesturing to Samuel standing solemnly beside Nemi and Chief Wovoka, embodies what our territory must become, not divided by differences, but strengthened by them. Not paralyzed by fear of the unknown, but curious about what we might learn from each other. In the months that followed, Samuel threw himself into his new role with fierce determination. The physical limitation of his permanently damaged leg seemed inconsequential compared to the scope of his mission. He traveled between settlements and native camps, mediating disputes, facilitating trade, and most importantly, challenging preconceptions on both sides. His unique appearance, once a source of rejection, became his most recognizable asset. Children in both communities whispered in awe about the Ghost Boy ambassador, with hair white as snow and eyes that saw in darkness. Parents who might have once feared such differences now pointed to Samuel's accomplishments as evidence that uniqueness could be valuable rather than threatening. On the first anniversary of the epidemic that had nearly claimed his life, Samuel stood with Nemi on a ridge overlooking the valley that had become his true home. New settlements dotted the landscape, but the Shoshone territories remained intact, protected by the agreements he had helped forge. "When I found you that night, surrounded by wolves," Nemi said softly, "I thought the spirits had sent me to save a child. I didn't understand they had sent me to help forge the salvation of many." Samuel smiled at his adoptive mother, at the woman who had first seen possibility, where others saw only abnormality. His hand went automatically to the wolf amulet that never left his neck. "We saved each other," he replied. "And now we try to save what matters most, understanding between peoples who see the world differently. The world changes whether we wish it or not." Nemi nodded, gazing at the transformed landscape. "The wise don't resist change itself, but shape how it unfolds." She touched the amulet at his throat. "You were abandoned because they believed you brought death. Instead, you brought a different kind of life, not the one that was, but the one that could be." Samuel's gaze traveled from the Shoshone winter camp to the Cooper homestead and beyond, to the newer settlements sprouting across the territory. His journey from rejected outcast to essential bridge had been marked by pain loss and sacrifice. The permanent limp from the snake bite, the emotional scars from abandonment, the complex grief of his father's death. Each represented a price paid for standing between worlds. Yet, as the setting sun painted the desert in gold and crimson, Samuel felt a sense of purpose that transcended personal suffering. The desert that had nearly claimed his life had forged him into exactly what both peoples needed: a translator, not just of words, but of hearts, a healer, not just of bodies, but of divisions. In the distance, a wolf howled, a sound that once meant terror, but now reminded Samuel of the night everything changed. He touched the amulet at his neck and answered with a smile, no longer afraid of either darkness or light. The ghost boy of the burning sands had found his place not on either side of the divide, but spanning it exactly where he was meant to be.